This is a clip from the Cannon podcast. To hear the full episode and get access to exclusive benefits, head over to patreon.com/thecannonpod and sign up for just £3 a month.
You mentioned it yourself, fullback is an area where Arsenal are looking to add to, and there are a lot of links at fullback. You got Sacha Boey, you got even Fresneda, but Joao Cancelo is the first one I'm going to start off with, of course. Fabrizio Romano confirming that Arsenal have close relationship with his agent. Really bad accent, by the way. I really butchered that. I don't know why I got confidence for that. Here we go. So Joao Cancelo is a player who could be available for £40 million. And yeah, it looks like Arsenal have interest. I don't think he's Arsenal's main option, by the way. I think he's more like a plan B if we can't get other names on in. If you can't maybe sign a Caicedo who can play on that side. Does a Joao Cancelo work in his Arsenal team? And not just work, but raise the level to the stage where Arsenal can beat Man City to a title, George?
It depends on if you feel that, the Zinchenko profile is something that you enjoy. I think he does things better than Zinchenko, but on a different side. I think he, look, we've seen him have the versatility. I'm not saying he can't play left back, but I think he does the Zinchenko role on the right, and that's probably where I see him as best. Do I think that we need to spend that amount of money for that kind of character, for that kind of wages, when we've already got the supposed, Man City player that we bought to do those things? I don't know. It seems redundant to me. And I just don't know if that type of player is really what we're after. When we talk about the other link that, everybody on Twitter knows that I love, there's a certain jewel in the market that I keep saying that I love as a more youngster version. And I think that when you buy a depth right now, I don't look at us needing a starting quality fullback. That's what Cancelo would demand, by the way. Like, he is ousting one of Zinchenko or Ben White, and you're making a decision between those two. And do I think that, he can do the Ben White role? I mean, he did moments, he can do it. I don't think he's only an inverted fullback. Like, I don't agree with those suggestions on Twitter. I do think he has the ability to offer himself out wide. He's got excellent crossing technique, so he can be a wide outlet in that lane 5. I just don't know if I see him having that explosive dynamism on the overlap, right? Like, that is not something that I really associate with Cancelo as much. I think he's much more of that type of super technical fullback that can either underlap or offer himself as a +1 and build up. That's kind of what I see. But again, we bought that player in Zinchenko from the same team. It really seems odd for me to go towards that type of player who prefers it on the right, while getting rid of Kieran Tierney. Like, you're getting rid of an overlapping option who already has your senior pro inverted option. It doesn't make sense to me. So ideally, I'm looking towards a more youth prospect that kind of offers that versatility to come inside, but also has the power and the running power to go on the outside. And there's a certain player that I love for that over others, but I just don't see the money making sense for me to have Cancelo. And also that attitude, I don't love it. Like, I hate to do character assassinations, but this is now 2 big clubs where minutes are important to him. Where's he getting the minutes? At Arsenal. He'll start, but again, do you want that type of player over Zinchenko? Or are you basically relegating him to the bench? Are you relegating Ben White to the bench for him? I don't know if that makes too much sense for me.
Alex, Sacha Boey, Galatasaray fullback, is another name that Arsenal will be linked to via Fabrizio Romano. And he's a player, reportedly price tag is set around €20 million. He recently has changed his agents, apparently, who were in London talking to Premier League clubs, and it looks like he's been offered out. I've not watched the player. I don't know if you have, but what do you make of the links?
No thanks.
No thanks.
Yeah, I watched him a little bit. I was asking George what he thought before we were chatting, and we're generally in agreement. I don't think he's technical enough. He looks pretty two-way to me, like in terms of he looks like he could overlap and looks like okay defensively, but technically I just don't think he's at the level. Again, it depends what Arteta wants to do. I think for someone who is going to feel like a bit of a project player, I'd rather work on someone who I feel like has more of a technical flaw or like a higher technical flaw. I don't think Sacha Boey does, because then you can kind of work on the intelligence in the final third, whatever it is. Those things can be coached. But for me, his technical flaw's too low to kind of come in and improve to some crazy level. When you've got a Zinchenko who's like, who was one of the most technical players at Man City, let alone, at Arsenal. I think that's what we're looking for. And the reason we want technical players in those zones is so they don't give it away. Those are the most important zones to have technicality in. So, I'm looking at even like the likes of Brook Norton-Cuffy, and I'm going, how do you come in? Because I was watching him in the playoff final. Superb athlete, clumsy. He's a bit chaotic. He's a bit sort of, the ball kind of bounces off him a little bit. He's fine. I think there's a player in there and there's a role in there, definitely, probably in the Premier League team. But if we're looking at the four guys behind the ball who we don't want to lose it, who are going to build up, who are going to make those right pass selections, who are going to be the players who we rely on to have the most touches, I don't want Sacha Boey having my most touches. That's how I feel. I don't mind a Ben White having my most touches. I don't mind an Ivan Fresneda, give it a couple of years, having my most touches. But someone like Sacha Boey, no. And again, it all depends on what he wants to do. I imagine we're going to have an inverted option on the right and an inverted option on the left, and a more centre-backy type option on the right and a centre-backy option on the left. So that would be Zinchenko and Kivior on the left and White, and it sounds like possibly Fresneda on the right. So yeah, I just think Boey is a nice player. I don't like it particularly.
Is he too different from Brook Norton-Cuffy as well, who we already have and who Arsenal are developing on a pathway? Like, it seems like the same type of player. Like, you're
George,
looking
do you think Norton-Cuffy can have a future in his Arsenal first team though? Because I watched him live in the playoffs final, and he was good. He was a very good athlete. But again, I said Premier League quality, Arsenal quality, league title winning quality. Do you think you can develop into that role?
Yes, but I mean, I think it also depends on what type of role you want on the right. Right? Like again, I think, look, can he do the overlap option better than Ben White? Yes. Can he do the build-up role better than Ben White? No. But does he have a technical floor that he's able to do it? Yes. Like for England, Brook Norton-Cuffy has played as an inverted left back in his age group, so he has the qualities there. It's not his primary profile, right? So. Does he have the quality, though, to play for Arsenal's first team? Of course. Like, I watched that final as well. I think the first 10 to 15 minutes, the occasion got to him. But then after that, he was phenomenal. And, he was the one that, created the goal as well for Coventry. And I think for a player of his youthful age to do that on that type of stage, it shows his character. And I love him in duels. I really do. I think he's such a strong athlete. But I would have similar concerns with him with Sacha Boey. And again, I'm a really big fan against redundancy. And if I see a player, for me, who is a very similar profile, who we've invested time in already, I don't see that as a smart purchase. I would rather, for the same money, because Sacha Boey is going to go for what, 20 million euros, 25 million euros? Ivan Fresneda has got a release clause for 17 million pounds, and it's a player that I have a lot more faith in going forward in terms of a ceiling. Ivan Fresneda is somebody that I believe will be the best defensive fullback in the world when he's grown up. I think that is the kind of level that I see. He is a far more defensive fullback than people believe. He is incredible in terms of his anticipation. He has these long-legged frames. I look at him almost like a more kind of P&P version of Livramento in terms of profile for somebody to get kind of an idea of what type of fullback he is. Same long-legged, broad frame. He kind of disrupts opposition really intelligently defensively. And he's got huge ground-running power. He can be on the overlap in longer distances. I think he's somebody that isn't maybe the quickest in the first 5 yards, but over 15-10, he really explodes. And you just have to look at his performance against Vinicius Jr., and he gave him nothing. And that is, for me, the best left wing in the world. And so when I have somebody that's able to really do the defensive job on Vinicius Jr., I take note. I think positioning-wise, Ivan Fresneda needs a little bit of work. He has a little bit of cockiness, I want to call it, in the build-up. He can overcomplicate things. He is a Spanish fullback to a T in tight spaces, but he can be a little bit too inventive there, and he does lose the ball in some positions, but you don't want to limit that courage. You talked of William Saliba and his courage, bringing the ball at the back. The last thing that you do to that boy is tell him, don't carry, right? Like, you won't get it right 100% of the time. But, I think Ivan Fresneda has a little bit of that, a little bit too cute in his own third. But, again, really high, tight space composure. And he's just somebody who is just about 6 foot, I think now. He's in that hybrid mold. And for 17 million pounds release clause, that for me is beating the market. I don't think you get much better than that deal if we're looking at fullbacks.
Yeah, you're right, a defensive fullback is important. We talked about Pep Guardiola and how he mentioned having a good 1v1 defender up against your Saka, Vinicius type profile was important. And on the right hand side, I think Ben White is good, but I wouldn't say he's elite 1v1 defensively, not as a fullback in wide areas, because he isn't a natural fullback. He doesn't have the same turning radius. And I think Fresneda could help us in that. My only thing is, how ready is he now? Because there will be a lot of pressure now. And if he comes to Arsenal next season, Arsenal fans are expecting a title charge, Champions League. He's 18 years of age, and I think towards the end of this season, he wasn't starting week in, week out. He kind of got dropped to the bench a little bit. Is he ready to make an impact straight away? Because there will be pressure. No? Go on, Alex.
Thanks for checking out the Cannon Podcast. To get full episodes and access to exclusive benefits, head over to patreon.com/thecannonpod and sign up for just £3 a month.